Good. Okay, thanks. Hello, I'm Ross Caldwell. I think I know more than half of you. You all look familiar. I work at the Criminal Justice Commission. This is Kelly Officer. She works there as well. So for those of you I do know, I come out and do lots of presentations about the numbers and statistics and all kinds of things, and I'm clearly not a statistician or a researcher, as you probably have noticed. But the good news is we have Kelly here, who is actually kind of the engine of our agency and does know everything. So everything. Yeah, ask her anything. So this will be way more useful than what you're used to if you're used to just dealing with me, probably. But thank you for being here. I know that everybody just ate, so it's a good time to be talking about numbers. I guess what could possibly be distracting from that? Okay, so just to kind of tee this up, and then we'll hand this over to Kelly. We've talked to a lot of you before about, in a perfect world, in a perfect system, we would have kind of all the train stops of the criminal justice system. So we would have reported crime, and then we would have who gets arrested, and then we would have what cases get referred to the DA's office, what cases actually get filed, who gets indicted, or charged with a misdemeanor, and then who gets convicted, who gets dismissed or gets diverted in some way, and then we would have who gets what kind of sentence, probation, jail, prison, at least for the felony stuff. And then we'd be able to look at revocation rates and recidivism and everything. We'd be able to map everything, see where everything's going, and we are clearly not there. So this is gonna be kind of in three parts. The first thing we're gonna talk about is a little bit about how we've got to the data that a lot of you are used to seeing and what we normally show in our RIC presentations and the various presentations and the stuff that Mike was talking about a little bit at lunch. And then we're gonna talk a little bit about a few new things that we've got lately, and then kind of just throw it out to you all and hope that there's some things that you can track in your own counties and that we can work with you on, or maybe do some pilot programs or something like that. Because there's a lot out there, there's a lot that we don't have, and that we should have. Some of those are going to require new data systems, which are very expensive and we're not likely to get anytime soon. But there's a lot of things that individual counties, I think, are starting to do or doing in some places, but not in others. And so we just want to kind of encourage that and talk about what could happen in the future. So hand it over to Kelly.
Thank you. Thank you. Like Ross said, my name is Kelly Officer. I'm a research analyst for the Criminal Justice Commission. I see a lot of familiar faces in the audience and some new faces too. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for being at the summit. And data is very exciting after lunch, Ross. I don't know what you're talking about. We tried to keep it higher level summary, so hopefully it's of a more practical nature. Mike Schmidt, our director, during the lunch presentation, kind of gave some of the higher level overview of what we're going to talk about. So we're getting more into the details of what he showed at the lunchtime presentation. And like Ross said, right, if we had data for every interaction point within the criminal justice system and every variable of interest, we would know everything there was to know about how our system works. We'd have all the data we would need to answer all questions and figure out how to improve it. That is not the case at present. So we want to show you some of the things we have been able to do, some areas that we think we'll be able to do in the fairly near future, and then other areas that are more of a challenge for us. And also the CJC really does some of this analysis for the entire criminal justice system, but today we really want to focus on the justice reinvestment programs and the impact of those programs in the state of Oregon. So, brief overview of House Bill 3194, Oregon's Justice Reinvestment Act, passed in 2013. So the sentencing reforms on the left were part of that bill. And the idea of Oregon's Justice Reinvestment Act, just like Justice Reinvestment Acts in other states, is that with these sentencing reforms and an increased investment in local public safety systems, we can achieve the goals on the right to improve our system. So Oregon's Act has 4 specific goals. Decrease DOC usage, so decrease prison use, and as Mike talked about at lunch, that's how we fund the justice reinvestment programs. Decrease recidivism, also will achieve those cost savings as well. Increase public safety and increase offender accountability. So the bill passed in August 2013. We've had about 3.5 years now to implement these programs, to see what the impact has been of this bill. How are we doing? Are we meeting these goals? Are we not? Where are we at, right? And what can we change in the future to improve those things? So we're going to go through a few of those today and kind of show you where we're at. So the first is decrease recidivism. So House Bill 3194 changed the definition of recidivism, and it actually made this definition a lot more difficult to measure. This is actually a lot of work and very challenging to be able to pull this together. So the bill passed in 2013. We didn't release our first report until May 2015. So it took us just shy of 2 years to even figure out how to compile the data, how to analyze it, show those trends over time, and really understand how to measure this new definition of recidivism. It really required merging several different data systems to be able to do that, which was also a challenge as well. So the new definition of recidivism is arrest, conviction, or incarceration within 3 years. So we need that DOC data to show who's been released from incarceration or starting probation. We need the LEDS data to show arrest for a new crime. And then we need the conviction data from the circuit courts to show misdemeanor or felony conviction. So the first round, May 2015, we have to combine data from 4 different data systems that are all compiled slightly differently, that all kind of format their variables in slightly different ways, compile 4 different data systems to be able to pull together this report and this definition of recidivism. So we've considered that a success, that we've been able to do that and pull that together. It was not easy. In about June or July this year, 2016, all of the circuit courts have transferred to the new data system. So OGEN is the legacy circuit court data system. They've transferred over to Odyssey, so now we only have to merge together 3 data sources to pull this together. So it has not been easy. We now have the recidivism data up on our interactive data pages, so that's also been a big success to get that on those pages. We'll show you what that looks like in a little bit. And then our November 2015 report won a national publication award from the Justice Research and Statistics Association. So we were very honored to receive that award and kind of highlight our work with the recidivism analysis. So like I said, we consider this a big success in what we've been able to do, but we do still struggle with some of the recidivism measures. There are some holes in the way that we're measuring it now to meet the current definition. And then also some challenges in tying it to impacts of justice reinvestment programs. Oh, I can do this. You're just... So the first challenge we have is that the recidivism definition in statute is a 3-year definition. So we have kind of a data lag issue there. Even if we take that first group of folks from when justice reinvestment first passed, from August to December 2013, we need 3 years to go by. So that's December 2016. We need data lag and time to pull it together. It's mid-2017 before we can see any recidivism rates for these first groups of cohorts coming after justice reinvestment. We don't want to wait that long, so we've got a 1-year measure as a preliminary measure to look at. But we still have challenges with this, right? How do we tie changes in recidivism rates over time to what the justice reinvestment programs are doing? We don't have a great answer for that. That is still a challenge for us to be able to sort that out. So as an example, we have probation cohorts from 2011 to 2015 with the 1-year recidivism rates there over time. These are folks that have been sentenced to probation for drug, driving, or property crimes. And so that blue line is the arrest rate for a new crime within 1 year, and that yellow line is the conviction rate for a new misdemeanor or felony within 1 year. So first of all, are these the right cohorts to even be looking at to tie it back to justice reinvestment programs? That could be debated either way, for sure. And then second of all, do changes in this rate, are they tied to what is happening with justice reinvestment? That's also a really difficult question to answer. So you can see from 2011 to 2013, these rates were on an increase, kind of a steady increase over time. And then from 2013 to 2015, they're fairly flat. That conviction line drops just ever so slightly. So is that because of justice reinvestment? We'd like to think so, right, that we were able to change that slight trajectory, but it's not quite clear. And then also, are these the right cohorts to be looking at? That's also not quite clear. But we have come a long way in terms of measuring recidivism. Now that we have this statewide definition that all of our stakeholders agree upon, what we can do is look at recidivism rates for specific programs and participants within specific programs. So we've been able to do what we think are some pretty cool things with that as well. So we have looked at these recidivism rates for participants in the short-term transitional leave program. So all the Oregon folks will be very familiar with this program, right? This was a sentencing change in House Bill 3194. It increased the amount of time a participant could have in the short-term trans leave program from 30 days to 90 days. And of all the sentencing changes in the bill, this one was the largest bed saver. So it's gotten a lot of attention, a lot of questions. We've done some pretty significant analysis with this program. Those 90 days, those are the last 90 days of the prison sentence, and they're served in the community on non-prison leave. So the program has gotten a high level of scrutiny since it was expanded in 2013. So we've looked at participants that have gone through this program and tracked their recidivism rates over time. So we were able to look at one-year rates. We released a report last January to show the one-year rates for those participants. And we are very soon going to release a report with the two-year rates. It's not available yet, so because you're all here in this room, you get an early preview of what that analysis has looked like. So we'll show you what that looks like. And it's really continued tracking over time of folks that are participating in this program. So we took those who had participated in the program and served their last 90 days in the community on non-prison leave, and we compared those to inmates who were statutorily eligible to participate in short-term trans leave but did not participate. So there's a lot of reasons as to why that could happen, and unfortunately we don't have the data to account for all of those in our analysis. So it could be that there are discipline or programming issues within the institution. There could be the person has detainers or hold or open pending cases that makes them not eligible to participate. And then the county can also approve or disapprove that person participating in the program that they're releasing to. So based on whether they have adequate housing, prior compliance issues, victim safety concerns, examples like that. So there is a somewhat subjective process to how folks qualify for this program. So when we compare the recidivism rates and we see a difference, we don't know if it's because of the services that folks got in the short-term trans leave or if the system just did a good job of picking the people who were less likely to recidivate in the first place, right? A lot of these things, adequate housing, the county being willing to take them, probably are correlated with lower recidivism rates, and we have not been able to account for that. But we can still look and see what the public safety impact has been for folks that have participated in this program and compare it to those who weren't able to participate. So as a point to make, if the recidivism rates were exactly equal, then that would actually be a win in terms of the program because there would be prison bed savings without any impact on public safety. So for the two-year rates, we have a bar graph here. So the orange bars are those who participated in the short-term trans leave program. It's about 1,000 participants from December 2013 to October 2014, and these are two-year rates. And then compared to those who were statutorily eligible based on their conviction but did not participate in the program. So the first set of bars is the arrest for a new crime, and then middle is conviction, misdemeanor or felony for a new crime, and then on the right is incarceration for a new crime. So the orange bars are slightly lower than the blue bars. So that is a positive finding in terms of the Justice Reinvestment Program. Now that arrest rate, it's pretty close. So that difference could have happened by chance, but the conviction and incarceration rates, we did find a statistically significant difference between those two recidivism rates. So those are positive findings as we continue to look at the performance of the short-term trans leave program. Now, these two groups are different in ways that we can account for. We see differences across gender, age, race, and crime type. So for those factors, we did try to account for those in our analysis. And when we do that, we find similar recidivism rates across the group. So again, when we find somebody who participated in the short-term trans leave program, and then we find their twin of somebody who didn't participate, only on the factors we can measure, and that's about 983 people in both groups. And again, the rates are fairly similar. So the arrest rate difference is not significant, but the conviction and incarceration differences are significant for that program. So this report will be released very soon by the Criminal Justice Commission. And then also just tying it back to our recidivism rate, because we have this definition of recidivism that we all agree upon, then we can take a specific program and evaluate, what stakeholders in Oregon have decided the definition of success is for these types of participants and their reoffense rates, and then we can see it there in this analysis. So we have been.
I just wanted to add, so one reason it's difficult for us to evaluate programs at a county level, like Kelly said, is that every county is doing something different. So we've got 36 counties, everybody's doing something different. Some counties got the minimum of $100,000. So, starting a program there is not the same thing as what Multnomah County is doing that got $8 million and has an actual, like a real program. You can measure who got into it, who didn't. So it's a little bit comparing apples and oranges. And in a lot of counties, I think justice reinvestment funds are going there are kind of augmenting something that already existed. So we can't necessarily measure everybody got some justice reinvestment money rubbed on them, and so now they're all fixed up. So it's not as simple as it sounds, and that's part of our legislation. The way that House Bill 3194 is written, every county gets to decide what they want to do as long as they're meeting the 4 goals.
Question. So is the Department of Corrections still using the single rate for recidivism, or are all the agencies now required to use the new, richer, multi-measure recidivism rate?
Yeah. Yes, that's a good question. In
Might
case
have to
everybody couldn't hear.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, is that what you're saying? In case anybody couldn't hear that question, the question was: is the Department of Corrections still using the single measure definition of recidivism, or is everybody required now to use this new definition of recidivism? So, Department of Corrections, the quote old definition of recidivism that Department of Corrections would compile is new conviction within 3 years of release from incarceration or start of probation. That definition was changed by House Bill 3194 in 2013. So I don't know that all agencies are required to use this new definition. It is what's in statute. It's challenging because the Department of Corrections was able to compile that old definition automatically because they had all the data they needed in their data system. So they have all these automated reports generated, all these things that just automatically compile and are reported out at people's fingertips. This new definition requires merging all these different data sources. So we have them on our interactive data pages now, but before we had them on our interactive data pages, there really wasn't a great mechanism to share that information and get it out to communities that needed it. So I know there is still some of that old definition floating around and being used, especially for folks that are used to using that DOC data system. But we are in the process of transferring over to this new definition. And the other thing is we have a statewide definition of recidivism, but sometimes it makes sense to look at it in a different way that's not what is defined the statewide way. And I think that's okay as long as we're transparent about what that definition of recidivism is that we're using. You saw the lunchtime speaker talk about successes in other states, and they really talked about drops in parole revocations and probation revocations. That's not really what we're looking at here. So it might make sense, depending on what the program is, to look at probation revocations as a success measure. Now, that's not Oregon's definition of recidivism, so we wouldn't want to call it that, but it is still a success measure that's worth looking at. So that's kind of the overall spiel there. Question?
Data related to the non-short-term trans leavers, are you keeping track of what that cohort looks like? How many of them are non-qualifying because they are not behaving well? How many of them are non-qualifying because they have a hole? How many of them are non-qualifying because there's no bed available in the local community? Is that data part of the back end of this so we can see what we're comparing?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. So the question is, are we keeping track of those folks that were statutorily eligible for short-term trans leave but didn't get it? Are we keeping track of why? And then keeping track of those folks over time. So we've talked to the Department of Corrections a lot about this issue, and they are working on updating some of their data systems to be able to capture some of this information, but it's not something that they have at their fingertips currently. So I know that they're updating the process to work on that. I mean, some of it, the discipline information, they can pull in. Program completion information they can pull in. I think they're working on the detainers and holds and things like that, so I think that's in process. So as of today, we wouldn't have a great way to do it, but we are working on that with the Department of Corrections to get to the point where we can do that. And as if especially think of the women's population, right? If we could just get a few more women on short-term trans leave, that would really help. And so there is a lot of focus on why people are not getting short-term transitional leave, and a lot of focus on trying to make sure that that program is being used at its full capacity. So I know there's a lot of attention on that. Ross might be able to speak more to this too. I know there's some work to try to clean up all these detainers and holds so that people, if that's the only thing keeping them participating, that can get cleaned up in time for them to participate in the program. So I know that's also in the works as well, but we don't have it today.
Yeah, I know there's been a couple of different efforts to kind of maximize short-term trans leave because it does seem to be working well. We're not seeing worse recidivism rates. So I think the first one was in the second biennium of justice reinvestment. we reached out to counties and asked them, do you have adequate housing for folks? And if you don't have adequate housing for people that are transitioning out of prison, that might be a good thing for you to spend your justice reinvestment funds on. I know some counties actually bought houses to keep people in. And then I think the latest one has been DOC. I think Jeremiah Stromberg's been spearheading this, but they sent out a list to counties of people that have holds. There's a lot of people that are not getting short-term trans leave because of like theft 3, weird muni court holds, and very low-level stuff that might not even be something they end up dealing with when they get out. But it's preventing them from getting out on short-term trans leave, and so it's preventing the state from saving money. So there's been a big effort around that, and I think the counties have been really receptive. That's pretty recent. So yeah, and just not to bring the funding into this, but it always comes into everything. But that's one thing that I think we have to worry about is if funding is not adequate, not only will the grants program suffer, but this short-term trans leave program that we're talking about right now will suffer as well. And that's been a really big bed saver. So.
Okay, thank you all. We're going to move on to the next goal of justice reinvestment, which is to decrease prison use. So in 2013, when House Bill 3194 was working its way through the legislature, the CJC worked with the DOC data to really refine it and look at the prison use data in much more detailed ways than we had in the past. So for a single prison admission, there might be 10 convictions associated with that prison admission. So we have a sorting mechanism where we pick that most serious conviction, and then based on that most serious conviction, we say, okay, we're going to say that this person, we're assigning this person from this county, which is the county of their most serious conviction, the crime type information, their length of stay information, and then also first sentence versus probation revocation. So first sentence is when somebody's sent to prison right at the resolution of the case, they go right to prison. Probation revocation is where they're given a chance to be successful in the community. If they're not successful and revoked, then they go to prison. So this is actually really complicated. Some people have combinations of these sentences going on, and so same thing, to sort it and figure out where it's coming from. What's really driving that prison sentence can come from different places, right? If they had that chance in the community and were not successful, that's a little different than their court case being resolved for a prison sentence right at that point. So it's an important distinction to understand. And then our Justice Reinvestment Program rules also state that the prison use is measured from drug, driving, and property prison sentences. So prison sentences for person crimes or sex crimes or other crimes that don't fit into these categories are not considered in the performance measure of the prison use. And so the Justice Reinvestment Grant rules provide that guideline for us. So Mike mentioned this at lunch. This is an example from 2013 of our first attempt to show prison use by county, and it is really hard to read. It's hard to understand. You cannot interpret trends over time. We were really digging into the sentencing changes in 3194. We're really just focused on like Rob 3 sentences and ID theft sentences, and this was really not that helpful. It didn't last very long. It's kind of one of those things we look back and go, oh my gosh, what were we thinking? This is not helpful. But that was really where we started, because we were trying to figure out, what does this look like as we're implementing this new bill. So then shortly after that, we moved to bar graphs, which were more helpful. So this shows just a year-to-year comparison. We had the most recent year compared to the prior year. Again, we're focusing on the sentencing changes in House Bill 3194. We're looking specifically at ID theft and Rob 3 and driving while suspended. Just to see those changes over time. So these were static bar graphs. We would then break these out for every county and first sentences and probation revocations, and Mike would go around the state and present this to everybody with lots and lots of bar graphs. And so that kind of got us to that point of being able to show this with the bar graphs. And then we really moved up in the world and have gotten to the point where we've got our data on the interactive data pages on our website. So I think Ross is going to help us. We just briefly wanted to show what these data pages look like. So Mike also talked about this at lunch, but we've been able to put our data on these data pages, and so it's what we're very excited about is that the trend data is available really at your fingertips. So whether it's prison use or recidivism or another measure that we've got up there, you can just click on it. You can, at your fingertips, select a breakout that's of interest to you. You can look at crime type or gender, select your county. So that's been very exciting for us. We've done a lot of work to get all of our data up on the interactive data pages to show what those look like. What is Murphy's Law? If it can go wrong, it will
Yeah.
go wrong.
I think we're good.
I think we'll be able to pull it.
Oh,
We can't
that's-
see it.
Oh, sorry, I guess we're not.
It's blue.
It's all blue. Blue is good, don't worry.
I know. So I am going to say while we figure out how to get it up on the screen is that,
thank you.
and Mike made this pitch at lunch as well. If you haven't played with the data pages, please go play with them, see if they make sense. If they don't make sense, let us know, because we want them to make sense even for people that are not researchers or even people that don't work in the criminal justice system on a regular basis. You should be able to understand what this is showing. And so we'd love that feedback from you. And so on our website, we have the data pages here. So we've got recidivism, we've got some short-term trans leave stats, more utilization statistics, and then our justice reinvestment prison use dashboard to be able to see on here. So just really quickly, want to show it off, want to make sure everybody knows about it. And then also, if you think about where we started, that awful table of numbers, and we've now gotten to the point where we've got online interactive data pages. So we're very excited about this. We really think of this as a success in terms of looking at justice reinvestment outcomes and having the information available. So you can see here on the data page, there's a map of the state, so you can click on the county of interest. These are the justice reinvestment pages, so they're really focused on property and drug convictions and prison sentences. This one is intakes. There's a lot of stuff on there, but this is just intakes, so you can see, you can just click on the county. So we've got statewide up in the corner, and then it shows the region and then the county to show what it looks like. Oh man, isn't this just always the way? Yeah. So I'll digress a little bit. Mike Schmidt, our director, was presenting this to the Ways and Means Committee earlier this week, and the rest of us were back at the office just having a heart attack almost. We thought, if it can go wrong, it will go. So it worked for Mike. Ways and Means went very well. And I think we might just have some slow kind of Wi-Fi things going on here, maybe. Okay, we're going to give it one more try. But you can...
All right.
All right. So we've got Lane County. So this shows this is prison intakes. So folks at Lane County sent to prison for drug crimes from 2012 to 2016, and you can see the trend line here over time. So 2012 and 2013, the first 2 points would really be pre-3194, and then 14, 15, 16 is post-3194. So for Lane County, for their drug intakes, we definitely see a downward trend in that for the first sentences, and then also for the probation revocations as well. And so you can get this on our website by knowing where to click. So we're very excited about that and wanted to show that off all to you, but not spend too much time on it because we got other cool stuff.
And so Kelly's written reports on this in the past, and the idea was to kind of get all the information in a report into a dashboard, but make it interactive, obviously. So you can filter by year, you can filter by crime type, and if you're looking at the justice reinvestment stuff, it's only drug and property. And then if you want to look at, we have some that are other crime types, if you want to look into person crime trends or sex crime trends or something like that. But because justice reinvestment is aimed at these crime types, that's what we're looking at. And then we also can divide it up by count and also by rate. So you can compare smaller counties to bigger counties. It gets a little weird with the really small counties, but again, these are not really built for looking at in a presentation. They're not great for that. They're really for looking at individually on your computer. That's kind of what they're designed for. So they're on our website. We have them for recidivism, and I think Mike was showing some of the justice reinvestment, what counties are using their money on. So take a look at them if you get a chance, and we'd appreciate your feedback.
Is the recidivism just property and drug crimes, or is it?
Yeah, recidivism shows the overall cohorts, and then you can filter by crime type.
Yeah.
Question, do you use the most severe crime if there's multiple crimes?
Yeah, for the prison usage, we look at the most severe crime associated with that. So if there's a robbery 2 and a burg 1 and a motor vehicle theft, we're going to count that as a robbery 2 prison intake from whichever county had the robbery 2 conviction. Yeah. Okay, we're going to go. Can we go back to the PowerPoint now? I think you have to do that. Oh, right. Good. Okay. This was the placeholder to jump to the dashboards. So we've shown the recidivism and the prison use measures that we have been able to make a lot of progress on in terms of measuring and sharing that data. We're working on a few new things that we're excited about, so we wanted to give you all a preview of that as well. So the first new thing that we're excited about is departure sentence information from the Department of Corrections. Now, what in the world is departure sentence information? So a downward dispositional departure sentence, that is a mouthful, but I think I said that right. So that's when somebody they are prison eligible based on their criminal history and their crime of conviction. But based on the way the case was resolved, they've been given a chance in the community to be successful. If they are not successful in the community and they get revoked, they will go to prison. So we really want to see who's on this downward departure probation, because those are the folks that if they're not successful, they go to prison. If you're not on a downward departure and you're just on regular probation, if you get revoked, you'll serve a jail sentence in the local jail, but you will not go to prison. So we really wanted to be able to to identify which is which. We haven't been able to do a great job of that in the past, believe it or not. So this is really important for justice reinvestment, right? There's a lot of county programs where the focus of their programming is to give more of these downward departure sentences now that they have more resources and programming available in their community. You can also do upward and downward sentence length departures as well. So we also have some of that data now, which is exciting, and we're still working on that as well. But we wanted to focus first on these departure sentences. So this is coming from the Department of Corrections data system. So this is community corrections intake staff that enter this information into the sentencing information, only if it's on the judgment and it's clear and they can get it entered in. So we have it starting from 2016 going forward. We don't have the historical information, unfortunately. But this is really helpful because it shows us the volume of folks who have these downward departures. And then over time, we can also see the success rate. So if the success rate is going up or down, that has a big impact on prison use. And also the number of downward departures being given in the first place has a pretty big impact on prison use. So like I said, we haven't been able to pull these apart. So we're excited to be able to do that now. So here's an example of 2016 felony convictions in Oregon. So these are the first sentences. We have the different crime types here. So we've got driving, drug possession, drug non-possession, and property. So that's really our justice reinvestment focus of crime types. And then we've got other, person, and sex. So these are not included in the justice reinvestment performance measures, but I wanted to show them here just to give a picture of the overall system. So here are the blue bars, the downward departure probations. This is the part we could not pull apart in the past. So these are the folks that, a way to describe it is they have that prison sentence hanging over their head. If they're not successful in the community, then they go to prison to serve the sentence. So this is what this looks like. So the largest group is property crimes, about 850 of them. And so for folks that are familiar with sentencing in Oregon, that should probably jive with what you would expect, that property group would really have the most of these type of sentences. And then the drug non-possession, so this is drug manufacture or drug delivery, also has about 270. So for our justice reinvestment focus, that's what we're looking at. We see there's also downward departure sentences for other crimes and person crimes and just a few for sex crimes. So again, that's not really a focus of the justice reinvestment programs. But if you've got programming that's focused on these downward departure sentences and you do have these other crime types in the community on supervision for these, then you might want to pay attention to those as well. So these are admissions to DOC. So there could be a few people repeated in here, but you'd have to be pretty active. So not a lot, but a few repeaters in here probably of individuals. So the orange bars here are regular probation. So these are people that if they're not successful and they're revoked, they'll have a local jail sentence. So you can see that drug possession volume is by far the largest, right? So felony drug possession convictions in Oregon are a lot of probation sentences. Again, people that work in the system probably expect that and are not too surprised by that. And then you can see, a lot of these property sentences as well. And you can also kind of visually see the proportion across the two. So these are folks that get probation sentences for these crime types and kind of how that breaks out across those. Here are local control sentences. So these are incarceration sentences of less than a year that are served in jail. So those are the gray bars. And then prison, right, what we're looking at in terms of justice reinvestment impacts for prison use savings is the yellow here. So again, you can see that property and drug manufacturer or drug deliverer is really the most important part to be focusing on for justice reinvestment. And those folks in the community that are working on these programs know that, of course. But we can really see the volume now. We can really see what those downward departures look like. These are just intakes and just first sentences. I'll make a pitch now to all my county friends that are in the audience. If you want to see this for your county, we can pull this for you for your county. If you want to look at the list of people that it looks to us like they're on a downward departure, you can check that and see if it's right. The harder part will be if it's missing. You'll have to really be smart to figure that out. I know some counties have programs specifically for these types of people on downward departure probation. So if they were sentenced in 2016, then we should be able to check that. So I'll make that pitch to the group. So this is a new data source for us. We're excited to be able to start working on it. And it is really important to know who's on supervision on these downward departures. So the next new thing that we're very excited about is the Odyssey data. So as I explained earlier, this is the circuit court data from Oregon's 36 circuit courts. So it wasn't until June or July 2016 that all the courts got transitioned over to this new data system. So we can now pull data from one data source to look at misdemeanor and felony cases filed across the state for these types of cases. It has the charge and disposition information. And this really provides the front end of felony sentence impacts. We haven't been able to analyze this in as much detail, partly because of the changeover from the older system to the newer systems as counties were going over. And then this data is, it's a little messy. It's a lot messier than the DOC data that we're used to working with. So we've done a lot of work to clean up the statute codes that are in there. We're not done with that yet. We still have some digging to do into this data to make sure it's right. So I'm going to show you something that's just an example. It's not finished. Don't draw any conclusions. But there are still some important factors that we need to figure out with some of this data to get it cleaned up more. So we're working on it, and we think it'll be ready soon, and we're really excited to have it. So I want to show you an example of what that looks like here. So we took a longer term look here. This is 2008 to 2015. These are felony property cases that are in the Odyssey data system. So we can really see the volume of cases that are filed, right? We couldn't really see what that volume looked like before, not in a way that was as good as this anyway. So here's our volume over time. And then here are cases with convictions, which is that gray line. So these are cases in Odyssey that show a conviction for the crime. This yellow line is convictions out of DOC. Now the yellow line from DOC is counting people, and the gray line is counting cases with a conviction. So we would expect the yellow line to be a little bit lower. The other thing, these are coming from different places. That gray line's coming from Odyssey. The yellow line's coming from the Department of Corrections. Two completely separate data systems, but are roughly showing a similar trend over time and show similar changes over time. So that is promising that what we're getting out of Odyssey is going to be useful and match what we're seeing in the other data systems. And then this is prison intakes for property crimes, the blue line. So, this is a very long-term look, but it can give us those trends over time and also that front-end impact of what it's looking like as these cases are coming in. So we'll keep working on this, get it cleaned up to where we're ready to actually be confident in what it's showing. Again, I'll make the pitch to the counties if you want to see some of these cases and see if they're accurate and see if they make sense or if there's something in there that shouldn't be in there. We'd love that. So that would be great.
And Kelly, you might have covered this already, but I think you expect the gray line to be higher than the yellow because the gray line is cases and the yellow line is people, and people could have multiple cases. For sure. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, some people are very busy and have several open cases all at once. So that we would expect that.
So this is hopefully a partial answer, at least, to criticism that we get, and I think rightly so in the past, is that we show we show data, we show prison use around the Justice Reinvestment Program, but we don't really show what's coming in the front door. So there's a lot of counties that'll say, yeah, our property prison usage is up, but we have 40% more property crimes this year. And so, of course, we're going to send more people to prison. We are trying to give downward departures where we can, or trying to supervise people where we can, but we just have more cases. So this will be something that'll allow us to kind of take a look at that on the county level once we get it all cleaned up and double checked. So hopefully it'll be a good resource going forward.
Thanks. Question? Yeah.
Can I give you the microphone just so we're recording it, so then she doesn't have to repeat what you say.
So on the dashboard, what kind of demographic characteristics are available?
That is a great question. So we've got kind of the ones that are available in the data that we have. So age, race, gender, crime type. On the recidivism dashboards, we have risk to recidivate score. So those are available in the data. On a separate project, we did kind of a deep dive of the race data in DOC and found some underreporting within that. So we're really just reporting what's in the data. We haven't done any checking of it or anything like that. And so based on what's in the data, we can kind of pull that apart for what is available within that.
Do you, in a secret safe place somewhere, have line level social security number to match
Social
data?
security number?
Yeah, I mean,
Oh.
the unique identifier.
Yeah. So the question is, do we have underneath it all, do we have individual level data with social security number? So we don't have the social security number. We have the SID number and name and date of birth. And we've used that to merge up some of the data systems across DOC and the circuit court data to be able to combine across those two things for the recidivism analysis. So it's not a perfect match, right? Data nerd out a little bit here. Name and date of birth is not a perfect way to match up individuals. You get some errors in there, but in terms of an overall recidivism rate, we think it's at about 2 to 2.5%. So, questions? Oh, we're good. Okay, so,
We're recording, so we have to.
Oh, sorry. So my question is whether or not any of these statistics are taking into consideration any of these inmates who may have recidivism or cases in other states.
So that's a great question. We do not have data from other states, and we also do not have federal data. So when we're tracking our recidivism analysis, we're really limited to within the state of Oregon recidivism. We can't look and see if somebody, crossed into Vancouver or crossed over to Boise and committed new crimes. We don't have that information, so we cannot match it up. The Bureau of Justice Statistics has done some of that type of work. Oh gosh, now that I've said that, I won't remember. I think the Oregon arrest rate increases by 5 or 6% when they included out-of-state arrests. So we do have some kind of measure of what is underreported based on this limitation. That's a good question. Okay, I think we're doing okay for time. So we've shown you the areas that we think have been successes in terms of advancements and how we are tracking the data and how we can get our hands on it. We showed you our new cool stuff that we're really excited about. And now we want to just kind of go through the limitations that we have in some of our data tracking, right? Here are the holes that we have. They're not going to be fixed in the near future, probably, unfortunately. And so it's really just is a limitation that we have. So the first big one is jail data. We do not have a statewide jail data system, so the CJC cannot look at jail data utilization trends across the state. Felony jail sentences are available in the Department of Corrections data, so we can see that, but we don't have access to the other types of jail usage statistics. This is a big challenge for us, right? We've recognized that in counties that having jail capacity is an important part of a successful justice reinvestment program, right? You need capacity for sanctions, revocations, and pretrial detention when necessary. You also need capacity for that initial jail sentencing as well. And so when counties don't have the capacity to do this, it really impacts the success of their programs to be able to run them the way that they would need to be successful. So this is a big challenge for us that we have. There's not a great way for us to get around it. If a county wants to give us some jail data, we'd love to look at it, but it's still only just going to be within that county. We're not going to have that statewide look. So that's a challenge. Oh, question.
Are there states
Yeah, so the question is, are there states that do have jail data statewide? There are some. West Virginia, I know, has a statewide jail data system, at a few others too. So, I mean, their structure is different, right? In Oregon, all the jails are run by the sheriff, and they have jail data systems that might work differently. They don't talk to each other. Other states, you know, the jails are run by the state, and so they do have that system set up. That's a good question. So this is something that we're not going to be able to fix anytime in the near future, but we recognize it as a challenge. The next thing is protect public safety, right? One of the goals of justice reinvestment. How do we measure public safety? It's a little harder, right? Recidivism, prison use, you know, we have very concrete definition of those things. Public safety is a little tougher. So we think one way to look at this is reported crime. Crimes that are not reported to law enforcement, we're not going to have any way to measure or track those, so we're fairly limited within that. Oregon State Police collects the Uniform Crime Reports data. We've had challenges with some underreporting and missing data in the recent past. It's for a very good reason. Several jurisdictions are working on upgrading their systems to a more modern crime data collection system, but while they're doing that, they've gotten behind on reporting their crime data. So for the 2015 release, we're missing data from some of Oregon's largest cities, like Portland and Gresham, and others in the Portland, or in Multnomah, Washington, and Clackamas counties. The other thing is, even if this reporting was working as intended, there's still a pretty significant data lag with this. So data for the full year of 2015 is not available until late summer or early fall 2016. So it's October 2016, and we're just now figuring out what happened for the full year of 2015. So that's a challenge too. I know those agencies are working on upgrading to that newer system, and that will really provide a lot more information once they get to that point. So there is some promising work being done there. But in the meantime, it is a limitation that we have. This thing is upside down. Okay. The other thing that is a more subjective, kind of squishy measure to try to measure is offender accountability, right? How do we measure offender accountability, and what does that look like? We don't have a great way to do that. We're still struggling with that. So one way we've thought about is restitution collection, and there may be some of this information available from the Odyssey data system now that all the courts have transferred over to that new system, but we're not sure what's available and how that would work. The other option we've kind of thought about is sanction and revocation data. But again, you know, we got to think about the measurement and what we're looking at here. Is a lot of sanctions a good thing? Well, that depends, right? It depends on if they were appropriate for the violations that occur. So we really want to look at severity and swiftness of those sanctions. And so there's more work that needs to be done to kind of better define those metrics and figure out, you know, what is success? What is the optimal way to use sanctions and revocations in a county? And how do we measure and track that? We're not quite there yet. So we will continue to work on that as well. So in closing, we kind of wanted to show you all the things that are available from the CJC and then the holes that we have, right? We definitely have some big holes. Now, we think there's some things that can be done at the county level to augment some of that, recognizing that you're not going to be able to hire a researcher, you're not going to be able to have a new magical data system, right? But are there things that can be done at the county level to augment what's available from the CJC? So a few ideas we had were the crime data, right? We talked about that data lag. For local LIPSICs and your police chiefs and your sheriffs that are part of that LIPSIC, is there a way that they can get that to the LIPSIC in a way that is a little more helpful than the data lag with the statewide information? And what does that look like? And then jail capacity too, right? So for the county folks, do you know how many people are in your jail today? And do you know how many males and females there are? And do you know how many are there because of a sentence or a sanction or a revocation, or are there pretrial or for some other hold, right? I cannot tell you that information. I don't have it. But hopefully the LIPSICs have that information, have it available, you know, the Monday of every week or the first of every month, right? They know what those jail trend usages stats look like. They know what their forced releases are, to really start to understand how are jail beds being used, and does that make sense for what the county needs and what's available?
Yeah, so This is kind of a pitch to you all. We know that some counties keep track of different things, and we would love to work on possible pilot programs or crunch your numbers. It's probably not realistic for us to take the data from every jail in the state, and we've only got one Kelly and a couple of the researchers, so that would be very hard for us. But we know there's some counties out there that have looked at some of these things, and if anybody wants to discuss that, we can, but we would like to be able to partner with people in the future and do some of this stuff that might not be at the statewide level. But if we can get it going in one county, maybe other counties can copy that and kind of steal the idea and move things forward that way. Definitely through justice reinvestment, we've heard that having a functional jail where you can sanction somebody when you need to and you can hold somebody pretrial when you need to is absolutely crucial, and you can't do much without that. If you don't have that, everything kind of breaks down and grinds to a halt. So, please be in touch and let us know if there's anything that you would like to work on, that if it's within our ability, we'd be happy to do it.
So we'll open it up for any brave counties, and I guess open it up for questions, too.
Yep.
I don't know how we're doing for time.
I don't know either.
I think we have about...
Yeah, we have another 5 or 6 minutes, so. Thoughts, questions?
Here's the provocative question. Although it's not allowed in the legislation, most evidence suggests the recidivism rates for more serious offending are actually lower than often the low-level crimes, a lot of repeat offending. So is one natural development of justice reinvestment to start applying this to more serious crimes?
Do you mean just for the recidivism measure, or...
Start applying justice reinvestment to more serious crimes?
Or do justice reinvestment for the whole system?
That would be great.
Well, so I might put Multnomah County on the spot. The Multnomah County Justice Reinvestment Program is broader than just property, drug, and driving offenses. So in their county, they did decide to broaden it out based on the resources they had available, and they can speak to this, an incredible amount of work through their lipstick that went into defining that program and making sure it was working for the needs that they had. So counties can really tailor this in the way that makes sense for them. In terms of recidivism tracking, we have that for overall cohorts, but then we can break it down by crime type. And there are very significant differences in patterns of reoffending for specific crime types. So it's a little counterintuitive to folks who aren't familiar with the criminal justice system, but the highest levels of recidivism are for drug and property convictions, right? Recidivism rates for person and sex crimes convictions are much lower. That doesn't jive, right, with your intuitive sense of reoffending. But really, those property and drug crimes are very frequent, right? And so that's where we see those higher levels.
I think as far as expanding justice reinvestment to other crime types, to do that on a big level would require new legislation. And I know that, I wasn't working at CJC when 3194 was negotiated, but I know a lot of people in this room were around, and it was a very heavily negotiated piece of legislation, and justice reinvestment is different in every state that it's been done. Marshall at lunch talked a little bit about that. And I think some states have done their initial justice reinvestment, and they've gone back to dig deeper because they weren't able to save as much as they felt like their state needed to save. So it would definitely be a big fight. But I guess anything's possible. But I don't know that, not with the legislation we have now, certainly.
Nothing prevents it.
Nothing prevents it, no. Nothing prevents it. It's, the language just says to reduce prison use. You could reduce it from anything you want. All the sentencing changes are to property, drug, and then the lower level driving felonies. So that's how we get focused on that. But yeah, nothing prevents it, absolutely. Anything else? Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks a lot.